Where's Balake at?
My name's Blake.
Do you want to go to war, Balake? I'm for real. Ron.
Ron is present, everyone. Welcome back for some more SPTV, where every day is a good day not to be in a cult. All right. Well, the only ones who done messed up this time are Danny Masterson's attorneys, in particular, the first legal team that he had. The earliest I remember these lawyers being on the being hired to represent Danny was back in 2021. And this was famous defense attorney Tom Mesereau, represented Bill Cosby, represented Michael Jackson, and his co-counsel back then was Sharon Applebaum. And so that was back in 2021. And then Tom Mesereau did such a horrendous job in the pretrial hearing that those two attorneys were fired. And then Philip Cohen and Karen Goldstein were brought in to represent Danny. And then at some point, Karen Goldstein left the team and Sean Hawley was brought on. Now, for those of you who may not know what we're talking about exactly here about Danny Masterson's attorneys being found guilty of leaking, what are we talking about? The leaking. In the first Danny Masterson trial that resulted in a hung jury, the detectives involved in the case testified, and that trial, that whole trial was resulted in a mistrial, a hung jury. The second trial just finished. Danny Masterson has been found guilty, and just before those detectives were set to testify again in the second trial, one of Scientology's attorneys, Vicky Podboreski, sent an official complaint to the LAPD chief about the detectives and complained and demanded an internal affairs investigation be opened up into them for them having given what Scientology claimed was false testimony about Scientology and about their harassment of Danny Masterson's victims over the last 4 years or so. In the emails that Scientology's attorney, Vicky Podboreski, had sent to LAPD chief, she attached a link to a shared file that showed that Vicky Podboreski, Scientology's attorney, was in possession of protected discovery material that the district attorney's office, the DAs who were prosecuting Danny, had turned over to Danny Masterson's criminal defense team. Now, Judge Almedo, the judge overseeing the Danny Masterson trial, had specifically ordered that discovery in the criminal trial not be shared with the civil attorneys, because Danny Masterson was on trial, criminal trial for having drugged and assaulted these Scientologist women, now former Scientologists. And yet there's also a civil case specifically relating not to these attacks, but to the harassment the victims have been subjected to since coming forward. Judge Almedo specifically ordered that the discovery in the criminal trial not be shared with the civil defense team. And yet that is precisely what occurred. So once Judge Almedo found this out approximately 3 or 4 weeks ago, she ordered an evidentiary hearing be scheduled to find out who leaked the info. Well, that's what happened yesterday. And by the way, Leah Remini was in court for this yesterday. Jane Doe 1 was in court for this yesterday. The 5 attorneys, Tom Mesereau, Sharon Applebaum, Philip Cohen, Karen Goldstein, Sean Hawley, were all present. And yet only 2 of those attorneys showed up with attorneys of their own, meaning representing, only 2 of them showed up being represented by their own attorneys. And that was Tom Mesereau and Sharon Applebaum. So basically, essentially how this went down is Philip Cohen said, "Wasn't me, Your Honor." And Karen Goldstein and Sean Hawley both said, "Wasn't me. We think it was those guys." And those guys being Tom Mesereau and Sharon Applebaum refused to actually speak up for themselves. And Judge Almedo, and they asked for all sort of delays and continuances, and motions need to be filed. And Judge Almedo, it's funny. So this hearing lasted. It wasn't a particularly long hearing. It didn't last. It lasted a portion of a day. And of course, if you were the attorneys for Tom Mesereau and Sharon Applebaum, you're probably thinking that the arguments you're making in front of the judge at least have some possibility of swaying the outcome of this hearing. And so Judge Almedo took a short break and then came back with a 30-page ruling that she very obviously had already prepared the day before or many days before. Her mind was completely made up before they even walked into the courtroom, which did not make Tom and Sharon's attorneys particularly happy. And she came back and said, well, they didn't do he didn't do it, she didn't do it, she didn't do it. You guys are the only ones refusing to comment on this. You're guilty. And the district attorney's office had only been asking for $1,000 of sanctions on each of the two attorneys. That threshold is important because anything that hits $1,000 or above is automatically reported to the bar. The judge actually came back with a ruling of $950. I've seen some coverage on this speculating that this is just a weak decision by the judge. Didn't want these attorneys to be reported by the bar. That's actually not the reason she came in under $1,000. Yes, the $1,000 threshold means it would automatically be reported to the bar, but it also allows the attorneys to demand a jury trial, for their own defense into this issue. And that would have resulted in just ridiculous and unnecessary delays. So, by coming in at $950, there's no possibility for these attorneys to turn this into a circus and to demand a jury trial and all this. It's just one and done, over with. And sure, they don't get reported to the bar, but they've been reported to the entire world in the in the headlines and press. It's actually getting a pretty good amount of coverage. One thing out of all the coverage that I've seen, some of the best print journalism about this subject is from the Hollywood Reporter, actually. We have Winston Cho. Let me just share some of this with you. Danny Masterson's former legal team sanctioned for leaking discovery material to the Church of Scientology in rape trial. The information was used by the church to file a complaint to supervisors in the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office that the lead prosecutor was soliciting false testimony from Masterson's accusers. All right, I'm going to zoom in on this a bit more. Okay. Tom Mesereau and Sharon Applebaum, Dana Masterson's previous lawyers before they were ousted from the actor's defense team, have been sanctioned for leaking confidential discovery material to Scientology. Judge Charlene Almedo on Wednesday found that Mesereau and Applebaum shared criminal discovery related to claims from Masterson's accusers that they're being stalked and harassed. That discovery was shared with Vicky Podboreski, an attorney defending the church in a civil suit from the women who used the information to lodge a complaint against the lead prosecutors in the trial that they were soliciting false testimony to convict Masterson. Yes, that's right. The complaints were filed against both the district attorneys, the deputy district attorneys, as well as the detectives. Okay, in the order, Almedo also concluded that Scientology's complaint was demonstrably false. This is on the official record, you guys. Pretty cool. Okay, let me see here. I'm not trying to read every paragraph of this. In 12 letters from Scientology to the LAPD, to LAPD chief, Michael Moore, okay. Citing the discovery, Podboreski also called for criminal inquiries to be opened into the detectives who investigated Masterson for allegedly failing to follow up on its claims that Masterson's accusers filed false police reports. I mean, this is the sort of ridiculous harassment that Scientology just can never, they just can't help themselves. They just can't help themselves but to do this. So not only do they file complaints against the DA and the detectives for giving false testimony, soliciting false testimony, but then Scientology files a report that says, hey, those Danny Masterson victims, they filed false police reports. And then when the detectives don't immediately investigate the victims for having filed false police reports, now Scientology demands internal investigations for failure to do their jobs to follow up on these police reports. I mean, it is absurd how, anyway, you guys know. Okay. She also claimed their testimony was biased against the church. Attached to its complaint was a link to a folder that contained a bulk of the prosecution's discovery that was provided to Masterson's criminal defense team. Philip Cohen, Sean Hawley, and Karen Goldstein, Masterson's defense team during the trial, denied they were the source of the leak. Hawley indicated that she believed it came from the actor's prior legal counsel. Sean Hawley throwing those other attorneys under the bus. Go get it. During a hearing on Wednesday investigating the source of the leak, Deputy DA Reinhold Mueller said that most of the discovery the church obtained was produced between March and December 2021, when Mesereau was Masterson's lead counsel. He urged the court to impose sanctions, arguing the documents were turned over with the intent to intimidate law enforcement officers and the accusers. Letting the conduct go unpunished, he explained, would have a chilling effect on accusers who come to law enforcement. These are experienced lawyers. They know this, he said, referring to the discovery procedure. These are the rules, and they've been around for a long time. Summarizing here a little bit, the defense attorney, the attorneys representing the defense attorneys claimed that there was no official order preventing them from sharing the discovery. And Judge Almedo said, the judge, however, found that the defense's position flies in the face of both statutory and case law authority and thwarts Marsy's law, legislative intent, governmental and privacy interests, and most importantly, is contrary to this court's previous findings and orders. She was responding to, like I said, she was responding to the nonsense that the defense attorneys were bringing up. In April 2021 discovery hearings, Almedo stated that, quote, Scientology is not a party to these proceedings, and that we are not going to litigate the civil case in the criminal case, nor is discovery that is relevant or more relevant to the civil case going to be a basis for obtaining discovery here in the criminal case. She also rejected previous bids by the defense. Now, remember, by the defense here, we're talking about Danny Masterson and his team. She also rejected previous bids by the defense to obtain discovery that could be helpful to Masterson and Scientology in the civil suit, including a demand for a number of items that she found had nothing to do with the criminal case. She wrote in the ruling, which cites a transcript of the August 2021 hearing. Quote, it appears to the court that not only is defendant trying to obtain material that would be helpful in the civil case, it appears to the court that defendant is using the criminal process to try to obtain materials that he would otherwise never be entitled to obtain in the civil case. And thus, he is using the criminal process to another end than that it is to be used for. Additionally, Almedo stated of Masterson's attorneys in the civil and criminal cases in a September 2022 hearing, quote, I am finding they are two distinct teams and have two distinct interests. So free flow of confidential information is not necessarily protected between the two. Lawyers for plaintiffs in the civil case, so that is Danny Masterson's victims. Lawyers for plaintiffs in the civil case against Masterson and the church asked for access to the leaked discovery materials to determine the information being used to harass their clients. They also moved for a court order barring parties from further sharing the documents. Okay, that's fine. We don't need that. We don't need that. Masterson will be sentenced on August 4th. He faces 30 years to life in prison. Well, thank God someone else got it right. So many media platforms have been saying up to 30 years. Danny Masterson faces minimum of 30 years. That is the mandatory minimum sentencing for the two counts that he has been found guilty of. 30 years to life. And guys, if you want to hear an absolutely incredible interview about what Danny Masterson is about to experience when he gets into prison, what his life is going to be like for the next at least 30 years, I'm going to put a link up above to an interview that I did yesterday with Tommy Scovel. You don't want to miss that interview. It's pretty incredible. All right, everybody. I'll quickly jump over to the super chats before we wrap it up. Clearwater Chad, thank you very much for your support. Hey, Aaron, I have 1,008 subscriptions. Just need 500 more watch hours. Thanks again. Well, great, Clearwater Chad. Clearwater Chad's put up some great content, has done a really great job raising money for the Aftermath Foundation, the nonprofit that helps people who are escaping from Scientology. So go over and check out Clearwater Chad's channel. Show Clearwater Chad some love. Tim Smith, this is good news, but I worry that this will bolster Danny Masterson's argument of ineffective counsel on appeal. Also, how crazy that our boy and Keebler boy have the same initials. Oh, by our boy, you're referring to Danny, and Keebler boy, you're referring to David Miscavige. Tim Smith, let me just point out, the ineffective counsel was his previous defense team. Those are the ones who've been sanctioned, not the defense team that represented him in this last trial. So I don't think that's a concern. Thank you for the super chat, Tim. Kelly O'Hara, I am shocked to hear that the defense acted improperly. Yes, my word. I'm shocked as well. Thank you, Kelly. Derek Wagner, smug mode activate. I love that. Thank you for the super chat, Derek. Youth Canoe. Whatever happened to Heber Jensch? Heber Jensch is one of these people that was a little too popular for David Miscavige's tastes. Heber Jensch used to be the president of the Church of Scientology International. Heber is in a nursing home. That is where Heber is right now. Abby Morford thought, what if Vicky Podboreski is sick of Scientology and used this mistake to break ties with Scientology without them attacking her? I don't think so. Vicky Podboreski has not been fired. She's also not the one who was sanctioned. See, the court was only interested in which attorneys leaked the information because those are the ones who broke the rules. The court has shown actually no interest whatsoever in Vicky for having received the information. In fact, Vicky wasn't even ordered to appear at the hearing yesterday, and she did not appear. She was notified. She was allowed to appear. She was given an opportunity to appear. However, she did not. She's not a party to this current process, interestingly enough. Okay, Seeker 0628 came in late. So a fine. Oh, so just a fine for a penalty. Yeah, I mean, that was really the only thing that was ever really going to be done was a fine, you know, going along with the fine, depending on the size of the fine, would be being reported to the bar. There was never going to be any criminal actions, criminal consequences for this or anything like that, Seeker. Thank you for the super chat. Arnie Van Halen, 950. In a perfect world, they should have been locked in a stockade and pelted with rotten eggs in the town square. Yeah, there you go. I'd show up for that. Liam Mullen, Aaron, they might now be subject to a California bar investigation discipline, even if the amount of the fine doesn't automatically trigger it. Oh, that's good to know. Hashtag Team Mike. Well, thank you for that, Liam. I appreciate that. Russ Hampton says, good work, but daddy. Keep it up. I wonder whether that was a typo, but thank you, Russ. Much appreciated. Good Lord. All right, everyone. Thank you for watching. That's all I've got on this video. Much more to come today. Much more to come later this week. Oh, it's already Thursday. How did that happen? Oh my God. Stay tuned, guys. Hit that like button if you haven't already. It actually helps, believe it or not. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not,